Miejsce kobiet jest tam, gdzie podejmowane
Women's
są
place
decyzje.
is exactly where decisions are being taken. Although this sentence may seem an obvious one, it is not reflected in numbers. Women make up 52% of our society, 58% of students at universities. However, only 15% in EXCOM. Women were only 15.5% of public listed companies last year. It is high time to change it. I am very happy to say that we are launching an international campaign, 30% Club. Poland is the 18th location for the launch of this campaign. Besides Great Britain, the United States of America, Japan, Mexico and Australia. My name is Milena Olszewska-Myszywiec. I would like to welcome you very warmly, and I will manage the campaign together with my colleague Aleksandra Gren. Good morning, my name is Aleksandra Gren. I have been supporting women and diversity for over 15 years in Poland and throughout the world. It is my great pleasure to support 30% Club initiative in Poland. This initiative started in the United Kingdom by Helen Morrissey. The mission statement of this initiative was to increase women's representation in the authorities of companies in FTSE 100. This objective was already achieved, and FTSE 100 and 350 listed companies have 30% of women in management. We have a very exciting program for today, for the launching event. This initiative has been promoted and is being supported by the most important names in the world of business globally. Warren Buffett, to give you just one example. And I'm very happy that we can have the support of the CEOs and chairs of Polish companies. 30% Club is a social company. We're not a legal entity. We do not collect contributions. You will find out today about how we intend to operate. We will tell you about how the club functions in other countries. We will present the local perspective. We will speak about the founding members, ambassadors, advocates for our campaign. We shall start with a global perspective. We will meet Anne Cairns, the global chair of the 30% Club. She's also the deputy CEO of MasterCard.
Hello, Anne. Thanks for being with us today. Welcome to the launch of 30% Club Poland.
Hello. Hello. It's wonderful to see you both, and I'm very excited about the launch.
Wonderful to see you too. Thank you for your trust, for your support. That was very important for us to launch the campaign. We have many people online, so please tell us how 30% Club works and how did we achieve success globally?
Well, I think you mentioned in your introduction that it was started by Helena Morrissey in Britain, and it's an aspirational club that's made up of about 1,100 members now. And when I say 1,100, I'm talking about some of the top companies in the world. Including people from, Coca-Cola in America through to Shiseido in Japan. And it's been absolutely a wonderful success in many countries around the world. Can you still hear me? Because I've lost my sound.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. So we launched in Britain about 10 years ago when we had less than 10% women on board. And now in the FTSE 100, we have 36%, and we have 34% in the FTSE 350. And at the time that we launched, we brought together chairmen and CEOs, mainly men, because it was the men who were in charge, who really thought that it would make a difference to their companies to have diversity at the top. And now, of course, we know on a global basis through McKinsey that companies that are diverse at the top outperform companies that aren't by about 20%, 25% on a global basis. So following our launch in the UK, we then opened up around the world. We're in America, Canada, the US, Japan, Brazil, all the continents of the world. And it's our future aim to be in all G20 countries.
And it's really nice to see you and to hear how the club evolved over the years. So today, with Poland joining, what do you think could be our contribution to the movement? And how can we inspire others in our part of Europe, given that Polish women are, by various studies, one of the most entrepreneurial in Europe? So what can we do? How can we inspire men who work with us? And how can we turn them into champions of our cause as well?
Well, I'm absolutely delighted Poland's joined. You're the first country in Eastern Europe to actually join, though we have actually been talking to Russia for a while, but they're not off the ground yet, so you're the first. You're completely right. Poland has a fantastic reputation for entrepreneurial women, and I think that you're going to be the leading light in that part of the world to say we can change things. And of course, it has to be the men that join you to say that they want to change things, because in Poland, as in many other places, we have many companies run by men and many companies where actually, unfortunately, there's all male boards. So I think that you can set a standard and say, in Poland, we're going to include women much more. And I think that from a 30% club perspective, you're already doing that by setting interim goals for 2025, aren't you, to hit over 20% and then to go for that 30% by 2030.
Exactly. We have this interim target of 20% women in 2025 and 30% in 2030. And as we are touching Poland, well, women are a minority on boards in Poland. At the end of 2020, that was 15.5%. So what message would you send to those CEOs and chairs who still do not prioritize board gender diversity?
Well, my message is, look, this is a global phenomenon, and women make up half the human race. And it doesn't make sense to be recruiting your talent and leading your companies with only taking people from the other half of the human race, because at this age and stage in our development, women are now graduating from universities at equal numbers to men. In some countries, actually, they're graduating at higher numbers than men. And if you're running a global business or a local business today, you obviously want the best people that you can possibly have in the job. In the global economy, by actually excluding women in the way that we do, we're impacting lifetime earnings by about $173 trillion. There are so many data points that show it makes absolute sense to diversify. And the investors who invest in companies are seeing that, which is why they're putting a tremendous pressure on around the world to get rid of all male boards. And the stock exchanges are joining. We've seen the NASDAQ making rules about that. And the investment banks are joining. Goldman Sachs are saying they don't want to IPO companies that don't have diversity. And they're doing this not to be kind and not to be nice, but just because they know that it makes business sense, because companies that are more diverse perform better.
This is so true, and the benefits of diversity on boards should be out there and so clear to everybody who is managing capital, trying to have better returns on their investments and assets. Often an argument that is being raised, often by men, is, well, women at a younger stage of their careers, they have other responsibilities, they set up families, they somehow get to a point where the pipeline is not full of women anymore up at the top. So going back to the benefits of diversity, how would you recommend to the men leading those companies that are not diverse yet, how to encourage women, how to help them in a way? I mean, they often don't need help, but still, how to help the system, how to make the system a little more efficient, so actually at the end of that pyramid, you still get the best talent?
It's a great question, and I love that you've asked it. Well, first of all, global companies are recognizing that it shouldn't be women who are just taking the whole burden of childcare. And actually, I'm the vice chair of MasterCard, and in our company, last year, we rolled out global maternity and paternity leave to everyone across our 200 countries. And what does this mean? Well, it means that our staff, whether they're men or women, and it could be single-sex couples, they get 4 months paid leave, and when they come back to work, it doesn't affect their bonus payout in that year. Now, what does this do to equal up the playing field with men and women? Well, it tells men it's okay to be involved in helping raise your family. And it's also allowing managers to look at men and women in the same way. They're not looking at a young girl and saying, oh, she's going to be a mother. They're looking at a young person saying they're going to be a parent. And you've automatically started to equal the playing field. The second thing that we've seen is very important is that women often decelerate on the first step of the management ladder. Again, McKinsey have published something about this. Inside my own company, we looked around the world and said, is that really happening? And it was. So we set up a mentorship scheme globally. It has 1,100 people involved in it this year. There are actually helping women at levels that are on the first step of the management level to succeed. And in the first year's results, what we've seen is less women leaving our company and more women being more highly rated. And we're just waiting to see whether this kicks the pipeline off higher up, as you say, or it stops it narrowing towards the top.
This is fantastic.
Yes, and it's good to hear about best practices that can be applied. And when you look at our members globally, can you give us examples of some other best practices that companies in Poland could apply here locally?
Yes, well, you have some fabulous members globally. You've got members like Citibank, who actually have a female CEO now, Jane Fraser, which is great. And she had a family, by the way, and when she was younger, she actually worked part-time, and now she's the CEO of one of the biggest banks in the world. But Citibank are publishing their gender pay gap. They were one of the first companies to do so. Why is this important? Because any company which is a PLC who goes out there and publicly states how they're doing, in other words, they're sharing their measurements, they then improve. And we've seen that happening in Britain. In Britain, if you have more than 250 employees, the government requires you to publish your gender pay gap. And therefore, companies try and improve year over year. So I think the best practices, Elena, are things like measure it, be honest about it, be transparent about it, share with the market, and then share what your progress is. People respect you for that.
I would like to ask you, Anne, about maybe combine two themes. One is how women have been affected by the pandemic over the last year and a half, and also future of work, coming back to the office, and often the excitement, but also the anxiety this raises across the board and globally, as now studies and reports confirm. Also, a recent letter by the Apple employees to the management to reconsider and to really make the workplace more inclusive in that way. Any thoughts on that? How can we make the now, future of work, as we have the opportunity to reset some of those schemas, how can we make it more inclusive, especially from the perspective of women? And may I just add that often that perspective is started to being shared by fathers who become single fathers. Because then they realize they actually have to drop off kids to school or maybe pick them up sometimes or go to recitals. So how to make it more inclusive for all?
Well, I think you've hit the nail on the head there in the sense that you're giving examples of how to balance your life while continuing to work. And I think that we've all done that during lockdown. I'm still doing that in the UK because the government are saying if you can work from home, then you should until we're more or less all vaccinated. And of course, working from home gives quite a high level of flexibility. You can take time out to pick your kids up or do whatever you need to do during the day. You find you can work at completely different hours if you so choose. You can work later at night, you can work earlier in the morning. You can connect up with people around the world just as we are doing in a virtual way. It certainly made my life easier as the chair of the 30% Club because I was speaking in Hong Kong yesterday and today I'm speaking in Poland, and I was speaking in St. Petersburg last week at the Spief. So it's really, it's really changed how you can connect around the world. So I think really taking all of those things into account and saying, here's the good things about it, but also thinking about the bad things about it and how to minimize those. I mean, for example, people have got Zoom burnout. I know I have. And in our company, we're starting to institute Zoom 3 days, for example. But we've also said, that we would like people to start thinking about coming back to the office in America for a couple of days in September, a couple of days a week. And it's because we recognize that actually people who are coming back to the offices are finding that seeing their colleagues and connecting with their colleagues is really healthy for them, and they're able to collaborate well. So I think it's being thoughtful and redesigning the workplace in a way that really does work for people, but at the same time allows that human interaction, because we're all humans. The anthropologists tell us that we need to see each other, and I think that we do. We have offices in so many different countries in the world, and we have different regimes working. In the Middle East, we actually have a hotel system working in Dubai, where you actually kind of book your room or book your desk space, and you agree with your colleagues who's coming in that day so that you can see the people you want to see. And I think having the flexibility and thinking about it very positively and very thoughtfully will actually make the workplace better for everyone, not just women.
Yes, and it's important that diversity brings benefits to everyone, not just women. And I thought, and maybe you could, we've touched already on the benefits of both gender diversified companies. So maybe you could sum up for us what women bring to the table once they are at the board level.
Well, I think it's not just women, but women are a good example of it, in that what you want at a board table are people who think differently from each other. Because if you all think the same, you can make really poor business decisions. And an example of this was I was actually on the board of the big chemical company AstraZeneca, and we were meeting and talking about Brexit. Now, it's quite interesting because many of our board members actually believed that people in Britain wouldn't make the decision to vote out. I actually believed that the outvote would happen, and because of so many people I knew across the country who had told me that they were voting out. I didn't, but that's irrelevant. And I think that having a board member like me who said, no, I think this is a definite possibility, and we must plan to the nth degree everything that we can do to make sure that if that happens, that the company is ready. You can sometimes be the only voice in the room that says that, but having people at the board table who can actually respectfully argue with each other, and sometimes the outlier is actually right. I mean, it's quite interesting, and it can be very beneficial to the company to have that. Now, I think if you think about your everyday life, wouldn't it be boring if we all just lived with women or we all just lived with men? I mean, I don't think any of us would want to be in that situation. So I think thinking about it from a cultural and social side of your company, you have to acknowledge that actually in everyday life, it's healthy and it's beneficial to actually have some sharing and equality between both sexes. And as I said, as a global business manager, I would never recruit just employees from half the population of the world, because I couldn't possibly have sourced all the global talent that I need. And I think that actually, if you think about where companies have moved from, we've moved from shareholder management to stakeholder management. So we're no longer thinking about what's our stock price. Of course, we're thinking about that, but we're also thinking what's happening with our employees, how do our customers feel about us, and what's happening in the larger society that we're part of. In my company, MasterCard, we think about that a lot. And when we think about things in this way, we start to change our people policies to reflect our employee base. Our markets are everywhere in the world, but actually 85% of the day-to-day buying decisions for our products are made by women. So we would be a very strange payment company to ignore women in our product design, or to not have them included in our technology groups, or to have our marketing campaigns focused against men. That would be completely wrong. So of course we're including women in everything that we do in that space. And we have many women leaders in our company. And then if we think about wider society, it's obvious that you can't succeed in a failing world. And probably the best example I can give you of that is that MasterCard Foundation yesterday stood up and said, we need to make sure that people in Africa get vaccinated. And so they pledged $1.3 billion for vaccines in Africa, which is, again, it's a great form of altruism, but it's not just for us, it's for the whole world, because we need to stamp out this pandemic. And it's not just the wealthy world and the Western world that we need to think about. So I think these are all things that companies do these days. And actually, the stock price of the company is good. The cash flow in the company is fantastic. And people want to join the company because millennials, particularly Gen Zs, they really care about companies with purpose. So we're not doing this because it's just good for everyone, although it is, and we're very happy about that. We're doing this because it's good for business too.
I think we have time for one more quick question, Anne, if I may. And thank you so much for summing up the benefits so concisely. A question on next gen, or sometimes feedback we get from parents who invest a lot into their daughters or sons, and there sometimes seems to be a thought of, well, this may not concern me because I invested in the studies of my daughters will be okay. Or the younger generation not seeing issues. So there's sometimes this notion of we don't need to change the system as long as individually sometimes we're okay. And very often when we speak about these bigger issues, we turn to those other notions. We need to change the system. We need to have sustainable, ESG-based, wholesome solutions for the society, and not just for some individuals. Maybe some perspective on that, because a lot of individuals who are super successful, and yet you're still fighting the cause of making it available, that success to everyone.
Yeah, I mean, I think it fits really well with my last comment about we're a completely interconnected planet. You can't have the internet of everyone of everything if you don't have the inclusion of everyone. You can't make it in a failing world. It's not that just a few people can be successful and it's all going to be okay. Mm-hmm. So you really have to make the world work for everyone. And all boats rise. And I think the pandemic has shown us that in spades. I mean, we couldn't have a better example of it. Now, I love your example about, people thinking about their own daughters. Actually, what I've found over the years is some of my male colleagues, when they do have daughters, and they're incredible daughters, are so thrilled, and it actually enlightens the dads about things have got to change around here because I want my daughter to be successful. There's nothing wrong with that. You should always want that. I want my daughter to be successful. But also what I want is a fairer world, and a world that actually includes everyone. And I think that it's good for society. It's good for all of us if we do that. And as I say, it's not just altruism, it's just business. We should think about it as good for business. So it's not just your daughter that you need to think about. You need to think about what's happening in your education system. And actually, we're pretty good on that. But we're not so good on women getting bank accounts. We're not so good on women entrepreneurs getting the funding they need to be successful. Only a very small percentage goes to women entrepreneurs. And yet, on a global basis, there are something like, over 100 million small business owners, and at least a third of those are women. So another example I can give you actually as a company is that in MasterCard, we're going after 50 million more entrepreneurs to include them in the financial system. We could have just let the chips fall where they may and go after those third women, but we said, let's not. Let's make sure that 50% of those are women that we help. And so we're going after 25 million women entrepreneurs. And I think that the more that companies think like this, the more that governments think like this, the more you create an equal world, and the more you help the global economy. Absolutely. And that's the important thing. Definitely. And we will never tackle climate change on an individual basis either. The road to net zero is a long, hard road where we're all going to have to be working together.
Thank you. This has been a fascinating interview to be replayed and re-listened to. Thank you so much for your trust, for your commitment, and for everything you're doing for all of us and the world. Thank you, Anne.
Thank you, Anne, very much.
Thank you. And listen, I couldn't be more delighted about this launch in Poland. You have some fabulous companies there. I can see them on the ticker tape as I'm speaking as your first members. And I think you're going to be an absolutely dazzling 30% club, which really leads the way in your market and in your region of the world.
Thank you, Anne.
Thank you, Anne. We'll now switch to Polish. Drodzy Państwo,
ladies and gentlemen,
to była Anne Cairns, globalna przewodnicząca 30% Club.
The global chair of 30% Club. Our involvement in Poland wouldn't be possible if not for the support and help of founding members. Today we are in the seat of Wirtualna Polska, and I would like to introduce to you one of the first founding members, the CEO of Wirtualna Polska Holding, Jacek Świderski. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It is a great pleasure for me to welcome you to the seat of Wirtualna Polska. I would like to extend a welcome to the 30% Club, which is a very necessary initiative. When we got an invitation to support this project, we didn't have to think for too long. And we are really happy that our new office, we've been here for a year now, can be used
for positive purposes also. We were wondering what else we can do as a media company. We decided that we could constitute a role model. I believe that Wirtualna Polska is a woman. 30% of citizens of Wirtualna Polska are women. And what is even more important in this situation is that you have inspired us to check the situation related to remunerations, for example, in our organization. And actually, in the last 20 years, we never had an idea to check such data. I mean, it never came to our mind that people doing the same job could get different pays for it. Well, fortunately, the results of our assessment were positive. So this is what we are very proud of, and we would like to inform everybody about this. But we believe that we should set an example. So in our capital group, we have 6 vice presidents, and we actually have 3 women. These are very strong managers of our capital group. And well, there is also the CEO, who is a man. So we have 7 board members, but we have almost reached the parity of 50%. Well, unfortunately, there may be only one CEO of the company. So right now we have like 40% participation of women in the management board, but still it is much better than generally in Poland, because when investigating this area, we were checking the situation not only in our company, but generally in Poland, and here the situation is not so good. We were wondering what support we can offer. Of course, in Wirtualna Polska, our editorial office is independent of the management board, but we know that we are going to have you not only in our seat here in the office, but also that there is going to be news published by the editorial team on our event. And we would like to appeal to the companies to diversify the management boards, to listen to more voices of both men and women. But this also means combat against stereotypes and lack of diversity. So I hope that not only Wirtualna Polska, but also other media companies will focus on disseminating this information. Thank you very much for your attention. Thank you very much. I would like to thank Jacek Świderski and Wirtualna Polska for providing support to 30% Club. Poland is the 18th point on the global map of 30% Club. In Ireland, 30% Club was established in 2015, and more than 260 members joined since that time. I'm very glad to have the representative of 30% Club Ireland with us today, Mr. Fergal O'Rourke, managing partner of PwC Ireland. Since the very beginning of the campaign in Ireland, PwC Ireland supported the idea of 30% Club. So now I'd like to give the floor to Fergal O'Rourke.
Thank you very much, and I'm delighted to be attending this morning at the 30% Club of Poland, a country I have visited on a couple of occasions already and hope to do so again in the future. When I was growing up as a young boy, there were many similarities between Ireland and Poland. First of all, we played you many times in soccer. We seemed to play Poland every year when I was young. But also, we were a country with a very deep Catholic faith. We were a country that on occasion had been invaded by larger neighbours. So we had many, many things in common. And in the 1970s, when it came to women, Ireland was a very conservative society. In our constitution, which was adopted by the country in 1937, it recognized that women had a special place in the home as homemakers, something that looks very archaic today, but is still present in our constitution. In addition, until the 1970s, if you worked in the government as a government official and you were a female and you married, you had to give up your job because a male would need that job. And that ban was only eliminated in the late 1970s. And yet, if we look at Ireland today, it's a very modern society, particularly as it pertains to females and female participation in the workforce and female participation at the highest levels in the workforce. And in our organisation, in PwC in Ireland, we have about 3,200 people. About 52% of those are female. And at the highest level of partner, about 36% of our partners are female. It is the highest number and the highest percentage of any professional services firm in the country. And as the managing partner or chief executive, I'm very, very proud of that. But it didn't happen by accident. It happened because a lot of people, particularly female leaders, were very courageous and very brave back in the day. And I was very fortunate when I was growing up. I had a role model at home in my late father. When I was a teenager, my father had a bigger job. He was a local businessman, and my mother was a teacher. But then my mother went into politics and became a government minister. And I saw my father then adapt to the fact that sometimes he was cooking our dinners in the evening, or he was bringing us to our various sporting or other school appointments that we had. And for me, it was a great lesson in equality. And when I joined PwC then after university, I was very fortunate in that my early bosses were all female. So I grew up in a working environment and in a home environment where equality was the norm. But as I grew older and I saw in society, there were barriers to females participating fully at the highest levels. And as I became a leader in our organization, and not just about gender, but I have a mantra which I say everywhere I go. I say, it doesn't matter what your race, your color, your creed, your gender, your sexual orientation. It doesn't matter. When you come into PwC, you can be yourself and you can make a difference. And the 30% Club for us was a great way of shining a light on ourselves and on others in making sure that female participation at the highest level was a strategy and a plan for us and for our clients. And we were very fortunate because of the depth of female talent we had in the organization. We were able to hit that target very quickly, both at partnership level and at leadership team level. But we were able to talk to our clients about why it's important to have that female participation at the highest levels. And I always remember one of my business mentors saying to me early on, if you were a fisherman, why would you only fish in half the lake? And a company or an organization that doesn't focus on its female talent is a company or organization that's not fulfilling its full potential. We find in PwC that being seen as somebody that promotes female talent, not at the expense of male talent. It's not about quotas. It's not about mandating that certain numbers of females will get through. It's about equality of opportunity. It's about making sure that the barriers are removed, that everybody has a fair chance of participating on an equal basis to promotion or whatever else. And one of the things at a personal level I found is that some of the biases were unconscious, and they were well-meaning biases, but they were biases all the same. So for example, if a woman went on maternity leave and had come back into the organization, a few years ago, if a big job had come up, we'd say, oh, maybe Mary, she's just back from maternity leave, her children are very young, we won't put her on that job because she has got her domestic life to balance. We would never say that about a man. And yet, years ago, we were trying to do the right thing. What membership of the 30% Club has taught me and taught others in our organisation is that you've got to look at every single thing you do in your organisation and ask yourself, consciously or unconsciously, do we have a bias against females participating at the highest level and realising their talents in full? And if the answer to that is yes, your organisation is not optimising. So the 30% Club for us, it's not just the right thing to do. It's not just about equality of opportunity. It actually makes the best business sense as well. And we found, since we started on our journey of gender equality a number of years back, we get better recruits to our organisation because they recognise that when they come into PwC, they can be themselves, they can maximise their talent. And when I talk to CEOs and board members, yes, there is, particularly at board level in Ireland, we're not there yet. There are some organisations where there is 30% representation on the boards. And those boards tend to be better performing boards than boards that are consisting only of men. The government, in fairness to the Irish government, have played a role as well as ensuring that in state boards, that 30% quota is hit. But in the wider economy, I would say a good start, a lot of good work done, but there is still more work to do. But to those organisations that are considering participating in the 30% Club, can I say that our experience has been universally positive. We have found it has energised our people. They see us as a progressive organisation. They see us as one where males and females are treated equally. But also it has been a great training ground for our own females who have got involved in the organisation. They have got more experience in dealing with other organisations as they have gone out to talk about the work that they have done within PwC for the 30% Club. So today, on this auspicious occasion of the launch of the 30% Club in Poland, can I give it my wholehearted endorsement and my wholehearted support. The 30% Club has made PwC a better organisation. It has made Irish society a better society, and has made Irish business a better, more equal and more productive business. I wish you all the best of luck, and I will be here to help whenever it is required. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much, Fergal, for such an inspiring presentation. Ladies and gentlemen, we have completed the international part of our launching event. You've already met Anne Cairns, our global chair, and Fergal O'Rourke from PwC Ireland. We are now going to look at the local scene. We shall hear about 30% Club Poland, about who are the founding members, who supports us, and who are our ambassadors. All this we will hear from Aleksandra Włodarczyk, the coordinator of 30% Club Poland. Ola, the floor is yours.
Dzień dobry.
Good morning. You have already heard about the concept of 30% Club. You've heard about the global activity of the club. My name is Aleksandra Włodarczyk and I will focus on our operations in Poland. It is my great pleasure to announce that we are the 18th point on the global map for 30% Club globally. All that would not be possible if not for the trust and support of business leaders. I would like like to take this opportunity to thank our founding members. Andrzej Antoń from Blue Media, Dominika Bettman from Siemens Poland, Katarzyna Beczkowska from BASF Poland, Bartosz Ciołkowski from Mastercard Europe, Julien Ducaros from Orange Poland, Aneta Kocemba from Credit Suisse Warsaw, Andrzej Kozłowski from Emitel, Piotr Misztal z Sumalingwe, Paweł Przewieźlikowski, Rainbow Therapeutics, Jarosław Szymczuk, IBM Poland and the Baltics, Jacek Świderski, Wirtualna Polska, James Walberg, Benefit Systems.
Kluczowe znaczenie dla sukcesu naszej kampanii 30% Club mają jej uczestnicy, którzy mają władzę, wpływ na
element for the success of 30% Club is our ambitions, but also our measurable targets. The main target is to achieve 30% of women's participation in boards by 2030. That is 30%. We also have an interim objective to help us achieve the overall aim. So by 2025, we want at least one women in executive boards and supervisory boards of companies. We shall measure the situation by monitoring the situation in 140 largest companies that are listed on the Warsaw Stock Exchange, WIG 20 and WIG 40 and SWIG 80. We are not, however, limiting our activities to public companies only. We also encourage other companies that employ at least 100 persons. When we were preparing to launch our campaign in Poland, we analyzed the situation. At the end of 2020, participation of women in all these 140 companies was 15.5% when it comes to management boards. And they were dominated by men. CEOs are women only in 4% of such companies. Who can get involved? First of all, members of 30% Club can be CEOs and chairs of supervisory boards. Right now, we have 13 founding members. However, we have very ambitious plans. Members of the club subscribe to objectives, and they also agree for us to use the name to promote activities of 30% Club. Thanks to their participation, they receive support for their companies in order to promote diversity. They can also benefit from experience of other members of 30% Club worldwide. We also have working groups. The first one is the investor group. We want to coordinate investor activities. We want to encourage investors to bring up the question of diversity. When speaking to boards of companies, to CEOs, we want them to encourage more diversity. Let me welcome and thank first members Egon, Noble Fund and NN Investment Partners. These are the first members of our investment group. In 30% Club would not be able to operate without companies that support us, promote our ideas, support us in promoting initiatives. We would like to thank for their engagement. Our partners include ACCA, CMS, Lotax, Future, Impact, M+G, Polish Economics Institute, PwC, Signum, The Way, and Young Global Network Poland. You can become involved in our activities, even if you're not a CEO or an institutional partner. You can become an ambassador of our ideas. And there we would like to thank Andrzej Poźniak, Ewa Sowińska, Mirosław Kachniewski, Justyna Matuszak-Leśny and Katarzyna Piasecki. We were supported in such a great way by The Way, BST Technica and Widno in organizing this event. We would like to thank all of them very much. All those interested in supporting diversity are encouraged to get in touch with us. Let's change the boards, the management. We shall now hear from our partners about why it is so important to support diversity and how to build best practices in increasing presence of women in ex-cons. So we shall hear from Mastercard Europe and BASF Poland now.
Różnorodność jest dla mnie wartością.
Diversity is a value for me. It is a value. Openness is a value. It makes it possible to build more creative teams, to motivate employees, and it also allows for us to achieve better financial results. Diversity is part of Mastercard's DNA. We are present in over 200 markets worldwide, so diversity is a natural thing for us. Diversity is creativity, inspiration, innovative thinking, and also thinking out of the box. We want to adapt our products to different needs and expectations. Diversity is stronger ties in our teams, and it is a supportive environment for our work. For 2 years now, we have been introducing our new corporate culture based on 4 values. Openness is one of them, and there, openness to diversity is very important. When we support this value, we use the best global models. We also implement local initiatives, and let me mention, Chemistry is a Woman is one of our programs. We cooperate with United Nations Global Contact and Forum for Responsible Business. In 2017, we introduced a global strategy for diversity in Mastercard. We are very consistent in implementing it. We have no pay gap in Mastercard based on gender. Our recruitment processes consider at least 1 woman for every position, in particular managerial positions. We guarantee parents additional 15 weeks of parental leave, and they are very eager to use it. Fathers are very eager to use it. As Mastercard Poland, we engage in educational initiatives that build awareness when it comes to diversity. We show and promote our best practices to inspire others. I am very happy that BASF has established a new objective last year. It's 30-30. It is our global commitment to achieve by 2030 at least 30% on global management positions. I'm also very happy to say that this threshold has already been achieved in Poland. Actually, quite a long time ago, because last year managerial positions in BASF Poland were occupied in 38% by women. In Mastercard Poland, women occupy approximately 33% of managerial positions, including technological positions. In Poland, 50% of our employees are women. And as for senior managerial positions, there we have 33% of women employed in our Warsaw headquarters. Our efforts in order to build diversity are appreciated in global rankings. We are, for example, this year ranked in top 5 in Diversity Inc. Top 50 companies for diversity. We are always part of this ranking list, and we have been ranked in top 10 for many years now. We appreciate partnership. We like to learn from the others. We like to share our experience and to benefit from their experience. As a leader in our sector, we would like to inspire others. We would like to support other companies. Mastercard's mission is not only to make sure that we have diversity within our organization, we also want to promote best practices in the world of business. 30% Club in Poland is yet another opportunity to speak up about the need for diversity and for equal opportunities. We want to achieve greater participation of women in senior managerial positions and the boards. We want to achieve minimum 30%. At such level, minority voice is heard, and it makes it possible to introduce change. We are very happy to be able to inspire other companies as part of 30% Club. Diversity gives us a wider outlook on reality. As we have already said, diversity can help in the decision-making process. We have a broader perspective. Women are 50% of human race, so that's 50% of consumers, investors, voters. It is well worth it to make sure that women take part in the decision-making processes. It can improve the decision-making processes. It can improve our strategies. Strategies based on diversity bring tangible benefits, translating into better financial results. McKinsey carried out a survey which demonstrated that more diverse companies achieve 35% better results than other companies. A global crisis caused by the COVID-19 pandemic underlines how important it is to have leadership that is combined with empathy and support for very diverse talent. Greater participation of women in management or supervisory boards is necessary because we cannot allow to exclude 50% of our population from shaping the world we live in. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my great pleasure to announce the first panel. It will be moderated by Aleksandra Karasińska from Forbes Women. Aleksandra has been supporting the activities aimed at best practices, diversity, equal opportunities for women for many years. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for inviting Forbes Women to the launching event for 30% Club Poland. This panel will look at the way in which diversity is perceived by business. Here we have Dominika Bettman from Siemens Polska. Good morning. Mr. Kamil Sitarz, Operational Director from Rival Therapeutics SA. Good morning. Ewa Woryszel, CFO of Blue Media.
Dzień dobry, witam serdecznie.
Good morning. And Mr. Krzysztof Walęczak from Societe Generale, Director General. Good morning once again. Good morning. Let me start by asking Madam Dominika Bettman. We speak a lot about the negative impact of the pandemics on the economy, on companies. Let me ask another question. Do you see also opportunities for more diversity in business in the pandemics, and if so, what are they? Well, first of all, it is my great pleasure to speak to you today to discuss matters that are very close to my heart and that I have been supporting for many years in my managerial roles. I'm very glad that we are launching 30% Club, and I am very happy to see such distinguished founding members. Pandemics is also a huge opportunity for diversity to become part of our everyday life. And this may sound a little bit scandalous, but we didn't need special initiatives. We want for inclusion and diversity to be part of every company's DNA. We no longer want to have to talk about this, to have to create strategies to achieve diversity. And we have already heard today that we are on the right track, but we have not achieved this objective yet. So when I think about the pandemic, I see it as an opportunity for us to speed up on this path. My belief is based on the fact that we are living in the world of high technologies. Things are speeding up. we can see trends that accompany digital transformation. Diversity can contribute to this in a great way. It is already a trend. Diversity is a value. It contributes to success. During one of the last town hall meetings in my company, which employs mainly engineers, I asked a question which sounded a bit cynical. The question was, why do we bother about this, all these topics about women, environment, and so on and so forth, as this is part of a package of our transformation process. I was asked, why are we engaging? And I was not appalled. I was actually very happy to hear such a question during a town hall meeting, because this is the best proof of the fact that people want to understand. They want to talk about it. If someone asked me as the CEO of the company this question, it gave me an opportunity to say that there can be no responsible business without diversity, without inclusion. Thank you very much. So we have this opportunity to speed up the process. Krzysztof Walęczak, a question to you.
A broad approach to diversity and equal opportunity in business. Anne and Fergal have already mentioned that, but from your perspective, what does it look like? Why should all players on the market care about diversity having an important role in Poland, becoming something that you will not have to discuss anymore? And what to do in order for women to return to their jobs after the pandemic? Well, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, I would like to thank the organizers for the invitation. And we fully agree with what's been discussed so far. You were right when saying that the introduction to today's event was very interesting and actually touched upon all the important issues that were an inspiration for us and for our activities. Mr. Świderski has mentioned that equality at work is a fundamental citizen's right. I fully agree with that. Any forms of exclusion or discrimination, including discrimination of women, is infringement of fundamental citizens' rights, human rights, actually. And the second, strictly business issue is that traditionally and historically, businesses have not been very tolerant to any forms of exclusion. I mean, historically, businesses have been the forerunners of the new concepts. Of course, we all focus on economic indicators, creation of values, etc. And any form of discrimination will destroy our goals, will destroy creativity, respect, and, let me repeat that, negatively impacts the value created by the business. So the business is very open to women's participation, and this is evidenced by our general support that we offer to the 30% Club. I would actually ask a question: which other segments of the society are less open to such concepts? Because, as I've said, businesses do support equality and diversity. But in order to make our discussion more interesting, I would like to pose a question: which communities or parts of the society do not follow these values? I'm fully believe that all the organizations that we represent are very active in this area. And as I've said, it's a great pleasure for us to provide support to 30% Club Poland. Well, yes, looking at economic indicators is a very rational approach. If you see that diversity is effective and profitable, then in businesses we should take a rational decision and adjust our strategies accordingly. So thank you very much for what you've said. And now I would like to ask a question to Ewa Woroszyn. A lot's been said both in Poland and abroad about women's leadership. During the pandemic, a lot of women leaders have demonstrated their effectiveness. But I'm curious about your arguments. Why do you believe that we need more women in leadership positions? Well, thank you very much for this question. Once again, it is a great pleasure for me to participate in this panel discussion. Of course, I'm a fan of 30% Club. In my opinion, in today's world, women do not always realize their own potential. They don't always see how important their leadership role can be for their company. What I've noticed when cooperating with women leaders, once they become leaders, they can demonstrate their talent and they add value. It's like a fresh wind in the executive committees and boards of companies. So really, diversity is profitable. And not only in monetary terms, not only is reflected by the results of the company. Like McKinsey has said that changing diversity by 10% can translate into 3.5% improvement in the financial results of the company. But I believe that through their role, including the family role, being mothers and providing support to families, companies may, women can put a lot of different hats when working in the company. So they can be useful in many different roles, and this translates into faster transformation, growth and implementation of new solutions. Additionally, women bring new, fresh perspective to companies and new ideas. We know that if we have a diversified decision-making group, the decisions are made faster and are better. Additionally, women are very good in communication. Also company communication, corporate communication. They also can have very fruitful discussions with employees and superiors. An example from the pandemic situation. Well, companies needed to discuss lower wages with their employees or limiting the number of working hours because of the pandemic. And in those situations, women were excellent negotiators. They could provide support to their companies in reaching agreement with the employees they talked to. And women can also contribute to stronger teamwork. Thanks to women, teams become more engaged. And I think that this also is important. And of course, the current leaders create the future. They prepare foundations for the young women now beginning their business careers. The current leaders are those who can provide mentoring and guidance to young women. So actually I'm very optimistic about the future. And I do agree with the previous speakers. This is the right direction that we should follow. Thank you. Thank you very much. You've said that communication skills are the strength of women, as well as teamwork and the fresh ideas brought to governing bodies of companies. I'm very happy that you've also mentioned the fact that leaders should be the role models for young women, for the young women to be able to dream, to have ambitions. I remember a statement, a sentence says that you cannot dream about something you don't see. That was the statement made by the CEO of PepsiCo. Now I'd like to ask a question to Kamil Sitasz. The technological revolution has been mentioned already. We're living in the times of change. Everybody's talking about innovative economy. Well, innovation actually is the word that keeps reoccurring in all the discussions. How is this related to diversity on the labor market? Do you see any links between diversity and innovation? Well, good morning once again. I'd like to thank you for giving me the opportunity to add something to this discussion. Yes, we work in the area where innovation and diversity are very closely interrelated. Well, our company is biotechnology companies. We work on new drugs, innovative drugs. And it's of course hard to discover something new, but if we don't innovate and we don't discover anything new, you won't be leaders on the market. The scientific and research community is very ambitious. And of course, these ambitions have to be translated into added value. At a certain stage, we've heard about the elements that create the DNA of the company. In our industry, the expert positions in companies are very important. Well, they are frequently combined with a high managerial position, but not necessarily. What constitutes real added value is the knowledge that the person can contribute to the company and share with the team, because it's not possible for an individual to be able to implement the entire project. We always need teamwork, and we need to motivate the team to be creative and to be innovative. In our company, women account for 60% of the workforce, and they are present on all levels, in all the areas. And of course, they also contribute to defining our current place on the market.
W porównaniu z tym, jak jest ten przemysł rozwinięty w innych obszarach świata, ma dużą drogę przed sobą.
Of course, if we take a look at the entire industry that we operate in, compared to European industries, for example, we still need to do a lot. We, of course, need more diversity, cultural diversity, gender diversity.
budowy zespołu. Jesteśmy tego beneficjentami, każdy projekt i miejmy nadzieję, że na samym końcu też
do benefit from the diversity, and we hope that at the end of the day, the results of what we do, because we're not only talking about implementing projects, at the end of the day, what matters are the drugs to be offered to patients. A very important area for us is the clinical research area. And in this area, we have a very strong team of experts, and actually these teams are dominated by women. And from the very beginning, they actually contributed to the development of the team. Thanks to women, the teams can work efficiently with good communication and a lot of flexibility. Our projects need to be flexible. There are a lot of elements that change frequently. But this cooperation is going very well. And one more element that I would like to mention, we're talking about high-tech industry, but of course everything needs to start somewhere. Those big corporations that exist now also had their beginnings. And right now, we have a lot of startups originating from the research and academic centers, but apart from having a business concept, those young people need to be courageous and have some business skills. I have a pleasure to know a lot of people from the academic community, from Krakow, but also from other places in Poland and abroad. And thanks to young, highly motivated women, the startups started being successful, and we actually cooperate with such startups. And we can observe the transformation. I mean, we have a person who was a very talented scientist and researcher, and that such a person becomes an entrepreneur, and such a person can also become a role model for others, and for those who would also like to become business leaders. Thank you very much. It's a very interesting intervention that you've made. Well, unfortunately, our time is over. I hope we'll be able to continue this discussion in the future. Thank you very much for this virtual meeting. I would like to thank Dominika Beckman from Siemens Poland, Ewa Woroszyn, Kamil Sitasz, Krzysztof Walęczak from Society Generale in Poland. Thank you very much. And more about diversity, you can find out in First Women Polska. Thank you very much for this meeting.
Well, thank you very much. I would like to thank Aleksandra Karasińska from Forbes Women for such an interesting question, and I would like to thank our founding members for their very inspiring answers. This has been the first of 3 very interesting panel discussions. We will now hear a short speech. We are part of UN Women and UN Global Compact. We support women empowerment principles, which are 7 principles to increase empowerment of women. And we have a representative of UN Global Compact in Poland here with us. I would like to invite you to hear from Kamil Wyszkowski, the Executive Director from UN Global Compact Poland. The floor is yours.
Halo, halo, dzień dobry.
Good morning. I hope that you can hear me.
O, świetnie, dobrze. Czyli mogę
zaczynać. That's wonderful. Let me begin. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my great pleasure to speak to you today. Thank you for invitation for today's event. I have been given 5 minutes, so I will try to be efficient in presenting the principles of the United Nations when it comes to objective number 5 for our sustainable development. And there we speak about equality, fighting against discrimination. In the background, and we should mention it during this launching event of 30% Club, we are also fighting against violation of human rights and also any other forms of discrimination, being in a workplace, but also in other spaces, such as the realm of education. I will try to touch upon all these during my short speech. Well, it is an obvious fact things are not going well. We can all see that we are faced with lack of equality, we are dealing with inequalities. And a survey that we organized globally showed us that priority is given to objective 5 only by 9% of companies that we surveyed. And from among these companies, 43% require the presence of 30% of women in management boards and supervisory boards. So we are speaking about a very narrow elite. And within this very narrow elite, only 40% are actually already trying to achieve this objective of 30%. This is very, very little. A greater share, greater than 30%, agreed to offer equal payment for equal work. So that's equal pay for 30% and 69% safeguards against discrimination. In particular, when it comes to fighting or preventing sexual abuse in workplace. UN Women, our sister agency, tells us the following. We heard from Forbes women's representative, Madam Karasińska, and let me remind you that in 1998, Forbes published its list of 500 top CEOs, and there was only one woman then. The challenge is great in the private sector. We have to face up to it. Another very important thing, only 7% of companies listed in Forbes have women as CEOs right now. So we can see the scale of this challenge. And global gender gap analysis shows that we need 107 years in order to close this gap. And globally, this goes up to over 130 years, almost 140 years that would be needed to close this gap. So this is the dimension of the challenge that we are dealing with. Another matter that should be brought up, together with Axel Springer, we carried out a campaign on the period needed in order to close this gap of unequal opportunities. I have 1 more minute, and let me bring up another important issue that we announced together with Adam Bodnar, Ombudsman for Human Rights. We issued a publication on the climate rights being part of fundamental rights. 70% of countries and societies, mainly from the southern part of the hemisphere, will feel the impact of climate change. And women will be the first one to suffer the negative consequences of climate change. They will be the first ones to lose their jobs. So the Global South will suffer first, and women in the global south will be the first to suffer. So we can expect climate migrations around to the year 2100. And of course, migration will originate from countries that are less developed. It will also deepen the inequalities between the South and the North. So thank you very much for the invitation. I would like to congratulate the organizers, and I would like to declare our full support for the 30% Club Poland. Also, as part of Equal Opportunities in Business, we support such activities. We also participate in preparing the ethical standards for business. So we declare our support, we declare our help. Once again, thank you very much for the invitation and for this opportunity to speak to all the viewers and listeners. I do hope that no one needs to be convinced anymore that diversity is an added value for business. Our founding members explained why this is so important, and they also presented what benefits stem out from a diverse working environment. Let us now focus on the practical application. Let me invite Cezary Żelaznicki, a leader of inclusion and diversity in PwC for this region, and he will moderate a panel on diversity in the eyes of the business community, best practices. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Cezary Żelaznicki and I'm managing partner in PwC Legal. I'm also a partner in PwC responsible for diversity and inclusion in the Central and Eastern Europe. It is my great pleasure to moderate a panel on best practices when it comes to diversity in business. If you allow me, let me start with a very concrete remark. A report that we prepared in 2019 together with a group of other global brands as part of our activities in 30% Club shows that those organizations that have a very systematic approach towards gender diversity achieve better financial results. We had case studies which demonstrated how these companies can be more innovative, how they can build better relations with their clients. We had a Unilever case study, and the revenues of Unilever after having addressed diversity were increased by almost 30%. I am deeply convinced that it is the mission for 30% Club Poland that is launched here today is not only to increase the participation of women in management boards and supervisory boards, but also to underline the business benefits that can be drawn from this very positive approach towards gender diversity in companies. So this is what we'll be discussing today. We'll be discussing best practices when it comes to diversity in business. And let me introduce our panelists. Madam Ewa Sowińska from ESO Audit. Good morning. Mr. Andrzej Kozłowski, the CEO of Emitel.
Dzień dobry.
Good morning. Mr. Jarosław Szymczuk, the Country General Manager for IBM Poland, for Poland and the Baltics.
Dzień dobry.
Good morning. And last but not least, Mr. Andrzej Poźniak, a managing partner in CMS legal firm. We have approximately 20 minutes for our panel, so without any further ado, I will move on to the questions, starting with you, Eva. What is diversity? How many different perspectives can impact decision-making at the highest levels? Well, a definition of diversity can be different depending on the angle that we choose. But diversity is one of the foundations of business development. In my opinion, challenges for the business community and for the human race are very complex. A group that is not diverse is not able to identify all the risks. A group that is not diverse does not have all the competencies that are needed. So those who are open towards the future, who are aware of the fact how important it is to look at every topic from a very different points of view, are building such diverse teams. You mentioned a survey by PwC, but there have also been other studies that demonstrate that in taking important, strategic, innovative decisions, diversity is of utmost importance. A diverse team can identify signals coming from various directions. So there are many different areas for diversity. We can speak about diversity in terms of age, cultural background, experience. Today, however, it is very important to underline that it is also important to ensure diversity in management and boards of Polish companies. After having listened to what has been said this morning and after having looked at the business community in Poland, we realized that women are not sufficiently represented at these high management levels. Thus, we need to think why it is so and what needs to be done to remedy this. The reports that have been discussed today show very clearly that justice, gender equality are very important. It is also, however, very important that diverse teams, diverse management boards are beneficial. Women have many competencies that can contribute to business success. Women can build very diverse networks of contacts, and Harvard Business Review showed that those businesses that are led by persons who are very successful in diverse networking are more successful in both times of success, but also in the times of crisis. These companies can cope with crisis better, drawing from the diversity. Future has a woman's face. Professor Omer said this, and he was very correct. Future of Polish businesses is also a woman. All those engaged in 30% club will contribute, I'm certain about this, to the achievement of these ambitious objectives. Polish companies can no longer afford, and Polish investors can no longer afford not to benefit from the potential brought in by women. Well, indeed, thank you very much for this statement. And let me now address Mr. Andrzej Kozłowski, CEO of Emitel. Sir, what ways to promote diversity are you actually implementing in your company?
Thank you very much. I would like to thank you for the invitation. I'm very proud that I'm among the founding members of the 30% Club in Poland. Congratulations to the girls who've actually made that idea come true. Let me start with saying that women are a very important asset in our company. They account for approximately 20% of the managerial staff, and actually it's more than the percentage of the total workforce of our company, because we are a technology-related company. So for the total workforce, they account for 70%. So women actually can contribute a lot. They know how to listen. They are very empathetic. They also contribute new ideas. We try to make sure that the participation of women in our governing bodies will grow. Three important issues. We try to create a friendly workplace. And it's not about non-discrimination or something. We want people to feel appreciated for their competence. Of course, it's not about favoring women. No, it's just offering the right working conditions so that they don't have to fight to reconcile their professional and family life. We also want to support self-confidence of women. We want women to believe that they can combine working for Emitel and their family-related obligations. Of course, now during the pandemic, flexibility has been forced on companies, but even before the pandemic, we tried to be flexible, because women frequently have a difficult choice to make, follow a professional career or to focus on the family. If they decide to stay with the family, bring up the children, etc., then of course they fall out of the labor market. And even if they want to come back later on, it's more difficult for them. So I'm sure that women will be more willing to plan their professional career if they have the possibility to adjust their working hours to their family obligations. And this is what we try to do. Thank you very much. Well, if I may, now I'd like to ask the question to Jarosława. We've been mentioning the promotion of women. How, in your opinion, should women be supported to be promoted to higher positions? Well, I think that it's not only about support, it's the matter of the strategy of the company and the values that companies follow. Well, at the beginning we've mentioned the economic dimension. Well, the IBM studies indicate 4 different dimensions that can be greatly improved if the company has an approved and implemented diversity and inclusion strategy. Of course, it's the matter of revenues, but also the dimension of innovation, which is of key importance if the company is to be competitive on the market. It's also the matter of customer satisfaction.
Znacząco są lepsze u firm, które
again, customer satisfaction is really much higher in the case of those companies who are diverse.
Znaczy, pracownicy chętniej pracują w firmach, które są różnorodne, chętniej zostają, łatwiej ich utrzymać w pracy, w szczególności w sytuacjach, kiedy jest presja, presja rynkowa, jeżeli chodzi o zapotrzebowanie na
if the company is diverse. So these are the 4 dimensions which indicate that diversity is of importance. Now the strategy and the values of companies not only declared but also implemented can be based on, well, the fundamental things like human rights, for example, because we're talking about the rights of individuals. We're talking about the concept of democracy that puts an obligation on management boards to try to provide equal treatment to everybody in terms of professional careers, promotions, etc. If you take a look at the impact of the pandemic on the companies, again, our studies show that women have been the largest social group that have suffered the cost of the pandemic, because they were responsible for children. A lot of women lost their jobs during the pandemic, and we have to bear this in mind. Yet another dimension related to promotions. Well, you need to have a pool of women to pick the persons to be promoted. So we need to build a pipeline of those to be promoted. And of course, you should not take a short-term, but rather a long-term approach to that. I mean, why we have so few women in technology companies? Well, yes, because girls pick art subjects rather than technical subjects in the high school. Well, this is not really true, but this is kind of a stereotype that we have. I mean, the division of roles between men and women. So we have the PTech program where we start to promote technology at the level of high schools, and we try to encourage girls students to get interested in working and being promoted in the area of technology. Now, in the company itself, if we're considering promotion for employees, do we follow the same rules for women and men? If we're building the succession plan, do we take into consideration that succession should concern both women and men? Well, this is a complex matter, of course. But I believe that this 30% campaign is a very timely campaign. Well, also from the point of view of using the economic potential of the country. Because right now there is a lot of untapped potential in the country, because the participation of women in companies and in particular in governing bodies of companies is too small. We do not really offer enough opportunities for women to come back to work after maternity leaves. We do not offer enough reskilling possibilities for them, and we do not offer enough preparation for them to make take the next steps in their careers. Thank you very much. Well, my impression is that even before the transformation period, we had a different situation than, let's say, the Anglo-Saxon world in terms of presence and participation of women in the labor market. And, well, talking about the Anglo-Saxon standard as compared to ours, I'd like to ask a question to Mr. Andrzej Pośniak. What is the situation in well, your legal office, but also in other offices like that? Well, first of all, I would like to refer to what the previous speaker has mentioned about wasting the potential. Kuba Wojewódzki once said that we were the world champions in wasting the talents. And this could actually be said about the topic that we are discussing today. We have the potential. We have a lot of well-educated women, and I'm talking about the entire Poland. But in terms of the opportunities offered to women, we are pretty well advanced. However, the practical implementation of all this is rather poor. Now, talking about our office, probably you've had an opportunity to see how legal offices are called. I mean, the brand names, let's say, of these. Like CMS, Cameron McKenna, Domański Zakrzewski, etc. You could continue listing these. And as you may notice, there are not too many names of women in those brand names of companies. Of course, we also have excellent women in Poland who are the leaders of legal offices and whose names are featured in the names of companies. However, the percentage of these women is very low. So based on that, we can say that the lack of diversity in legal offices is unfortunately doing very well. So if this is true at the top levels, it's hard to assume that at lower levels the situation would be much different. We do check the situation in our organization, and we also make comparisons with other European countries and also other continents. And according to our research, and actually that surprised me, I analyzed that yesterday, having in mind today's discussion, and it turned out that in the Central and Eastern Europe we are not really doing very well in terms of diversity, and we are doing worse than the Western countries. Although my personal experience is that the situation is improving pretty quickly. We have quite a lot of women who are becoming the leaders of legal offices, and these women are very successful. So, for example, talking about our organization, I mean, our most important global partner is a woman, Penelope Warren. We also have Edna Petrani at the European level. And we had Małgorzata Surdek in Poland for several years, who was the leading partner. So those were very good examples. Well, as I can see, I have 30 seconds left. So, well, it's like having a race. So what I would like to note is what has been said many times. This is good for our business. This has been calculated. Now the question arises whether we implement this concept fast enough, and do we do it in a correct manner. You need to become aware of the value that arises for greater involvement of women, because this can be translated into success of our organizations, natural success, not artificial success. And I believe that the 30% Club is the organization that promotes such an approach, and I'm very happy that we can support this initiative. Thank you very much. Well, unfortunately, we've exhausted our time. I believe that we could continue discussing these topics for much longer. And, well, Karol Stabings, the head of PwC, said that we need to make sure we change the rhetoric. It's not for women to replace men overnight. The point is that the women who have the potential, who have talent, to take the roles that they deserve to take. And I believe that the 30% Club will play this important role in supporting women and strengthening, empowering women. So I would like to wish you a fruitful remaining part of the conference. Thank you.
Thank you very much for this panel.
Członkowie naszej kampanii przedstawili Państwu, jak wspierać
founding partners of our campaign showed you how to create equal opportunities and how to introduce best practices in order to promote diversity. Of course, we are aiming at various stakeholders, including investors. Investors can have real impact on the composition of executive boards and committees. So the idea of our first working group, investor group, will be discussed by Vilma Valenti from Environmental Social Governance in Amundi. She was one of the founding members of the investor group in France. Vilma, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much for inviting me. I can only see that the great work that has been done to prepare the launch and to build the club, it's extraordinary. I'm really honored to be part of this launch. I'm here to share with you some of the experience that we've had in the 30% France Club France Investor Group. We launched it last November, so it's quite new, but it has been already an exciting journey. And if you want, the first element is to adapt your investor group to your own context. That for us in France meant the fact that a law that was passed 10 years ago already imposed gender diversity in the board. So our interest has gone immediately on the executive management level. That's the focus of our activity, and that is where we have put our target for engagement to have at least 30% of women at the executive management level by 2025, and that's how we engaged with companies. And the France fares, if you want, relatively not too bad compared to other countries in the percentage of women on executive management committees, but it's better overall. So it's actually a race for all countries in order to improve. And here you can see I've put a slide up that shows how the law, the Koppel-Zimmermann law, had the effect to increase diversity in the boards while management, the executive management percentage of women has remained low, and the growth has been really disappointing. So that there is actually a law in France that aims to point to accelerate this growth, but our engagement is nevertheless very valid, because we feel that it's much better when it is this growth of women is bottom up and it comes from a real selection of the best talent within companies. We are not at all in line with a concept of quotas, while we do really encourage to have an aspiration of having at least 30% of women intended as a floor, not at all as a ceiling. The 30% Club in France launched with 6 members, and now we're already 12 with more than 5.5 trillion in assets. And we will be sharing, we will be switching a chairmanship for the first year. Amundi and AXA are chairing the initiative, but every year it will roll to other members. And the value of having different members that have different approaches has been immense. Like I can tell you, it has been really great to share the experience with other companies that had already specialized products on the gender theme. While, for example, we in Amundi have been seeing a steady growth of interest. Some clients are already ahead of us and ask us to monitor gender and other aspects of diversity in the assets we manage for them, but it is only growing, and it is entering actively in the innovation of products throughout the company. what have we done in order to start with how to choose the companies to engage with? We have been looking at all the 120 largest companies listed in the market in France, and we have been using an acid test that is our ratio that compares the percentage of female executive management on the percentage of female employed in the company. This actually allows us to select for specific engagement companies across sectors. So you would have different companies that have, like for example, as we were mentioning in the presentation, that have a lower percentage of women overall, but still have a decent representation at the board. We have other companies that have a very large representation of women in the total workforce that would get close to a 30% representation on executive management, but still that means they are unbalanced. So they are not using well or the talent pool that they have in the company. So the ratio that I show you here in the graph is the one that actually we have been using to select companies to have a more direct engagement. We have a soft engagement with all 120 companies, while we have now meetings either done or planned with 24 companies. That's the closer engagement with we have. And this has allowed us to effectively exchange and see experiences of very different kinds among sectors. The sectors that have in the consumer space that have a lot of talent available, but still in many cases are failing to bring women on to the top roles. And this we feel it's mainly a question of culture to be changed in the company. The sector of the sectors of STEM, like science, technology, that blame a lot of difficulties on the lack of students coming out of university in the disciplines that they're looking at. So they also blame lack of talent available, but effectively also recognize their own role in making it more clear that their companies are attractive for women to work with, from high school, in college, to be clear that there is a career opportunity and be very explicit in guiding women in their career opportunity within the company. The financial sector, that is pretty much balanced in terms of women representation in the overall workforce, but still is lacking at the senior management level. And here it's obviously very much a question of culture that is very difficult to change. One of the things we have been doing with companies, it has been to discuss with them not only gender equality, but other themes. And also one of the things that they have asked us has been to share what are the best practices and the best experiences and what strategies work best. And one of the activities that we have been doing together with APICAP, one of the members, has been to organize panels for the companies to discuss among themselves what are these best practices. We had one last week that we'll have more in the future, and this has been a really good way for companies to compare stories among themselves, and some very interesting aspects have been coming up, but I've felt the echo of the same elements in the discussion that I've heard before. The changing culture is extremely important. The increase in diversity must be taken as a business objective as any other, and the necessity not to take the attention of the target, because as soon as companies tend to take the attention off the specific target of increasing diversity and increasing the balance of gender in their companies, there may be a tendency to go back in terms of the results already achieved. And obviously, this has been an experience of some companies in the last year that have lost female managers that they've gained before and have not been able to replace them as quickly. The part that has been more interesting to discuss with companies has been really the work in building a career path for women starting from a very early level. This is the area where companies are investing in order to obtain stable results and have the correct pool of talent in their companies in order to continue improving over the years. Thank you very much again for the opportunity to share this with you, and we will be happy to discuss with you on the progress of our work and be of help, if possible, in your own initiatives. I tell you, this has been starting to be reflected in the products that we offer to clients, and I'm convinced it will be increasing even more in the future.
Institutional investors play an important role in reaching diversity in governing bodies of companies. You have established the International Investor Group, but now we should take a look at the same issue from the perspective of Poland. I would like to ask Mirosław Kapniewski to chair the panel or moderate the panel discussion. Mirosław, thank you very much for your support, and let's have the panel discussion. Thank you very much for the invitation. I have a pleasure to moderate this panel discussion, and the excellent guests that we have are as follows. Mr. Piotr Misztal, Chair of the Board from Sumalingua. Welcome. Aneta Kocemba, from the Managing Director of Credit Suisse in Warsaw. Welcome. Paweł Chomiński from Noble Funds TFI. Welcome. And Małgorzata Barska, CEO from NNIP Partners. So we've already tested the microphones, I've introduced the panelists, so we can start the discussion. We've heard the presentation of the investor group, but Paweł, could you please say more or summarize what the investor group is and how it works? Well, yes, we are a member of the investor group, and our goal is to promote our campaign among the listed companies, because we frequently have contacts with those companies in which we invest, and several times a year we meet the management boards, so it's a good opportunity to promote the ideas that we are discussing today. We may try to convince management boards, CFOs, to also follow the same principles. We can also exercise our corporate rights by voting at general assemblies, or we can also propose candidates for the governing bodies of companies who, in our opinion, might be better for the case of diversity in governing bodies. Apart from that, it seems that we may also convince management boards to expand their annual reports and to focus only on diversity. And in exceptional cases, if, despite our requests, the relevant policy is not implemented, we can always vote against the adoption of the report of such a company during the General Assembly. But this is an extreme case. We also try to increase diversity on our side of the market, because actually that financial sector is still dominated by men. We try to attract interest of students in our sector. They can then have apprenticeship programs in financial companies. And probably if the companies that we cooperate with were more willing to offer similar programs, then probably this would contribute to increased participation of women. Well, hopefully this will happen, but I have a question to Małgorzata Barska. Małgorzata, from what you've heard a moment ago, including the criteria in the decision-making processes, is this already happening, or is it going to happen in the future? Well, thank you very much for inviting me to this panel discussion. Let me repeat that yes, that's true that in our business there are a few women only, but definitely the situation is going to improve. Going back to your question, yes, this is already happening, and in our company, including the SDG criteria is actually implemented. Well, we exclude companies who have controversial operations, like, for example, producing tobacco products, etc. The second pillar that we have is based on involvement or commitment. We do realize that certain companies are only now starting on those goals, so we prefer to talk to them and have a discussion with them rather than exclude them. If the company has some ideas how to support those goals, for example, by a multi-annual program of reduction of greenhouse gas emissions, then we can continue cooperating with such a company. Now the next pillar, well, we also have very precise provisions on how to support gender equality. You can find that on our website. And the fourth pillar is also very important. The analysis of non-financial aspects of companies. This analysis also is translated directly into the assessment that we made of the company and the ranking that we have. And this is what we've adopted for valuation of companies, and of course this impacts our investment decisions. But thank you very much, President. And now I have a question to a representative of a company, Piotr Miszna. What is the situation like from the perspective of the listed companies, but also other companies? Well, thank you very much. I'm actually in a double role here because I'm the member of the supervisory board of Sumalingue technology, but I also have a role in a non-public company, so I have a comparison of how such initiatives develop in both types of companies. What I can say is that a lot of emphasis on promotion of such initiatives has been there for the last 3 years. This is true for private equity funds. They already have very strict procedures among the rules. This is like part of their DNA. And without following such criteria, they couldn't attract funds to make subsequent investments. This is the trend that is a must-have today. Monitoring and reporting on all the indicators, indicating the company's own activities, also activities undertaken in the portfolio companies. And for us, this is a very important element of the assessment whether a given company can get funding or not. In the listed companies, despite of what has been said by the previous speakers, I think that in such companies the perspective of broader implementation of diversity strategies and SDGs it's not so strong yet, because the institutional investors do not have so much impact on managements of companies. Of course, if we're talking about big investors, they can exert impact, but for smaller investors they can't do much. Yes, true. At the moment it's not so big, but we hope that soon it's going to change. And now, if I may, I would like to give the floor to Aneta Kocemba. I would like to ask you about the diversity from the perspective of investment banking and also from the perspective of a woman who has actually broken the glass ceiling, or several ceilings actually. Well, I have to say that over the last 20 years I can see I can observe the situation in the global investment banking, because I started my professional career about 20 years ago. And I think that the topics that should be discussed is to change the stereotype of investment banking, because investment banking is frequently perceived as something very difficult and fit for men only, and not offering very good working conditions for women. Of course, there have been some changes in this respect over the last 20 years, but I think that we should promote the idea of this industry being different than the stereotype. Of course, the stereotype may be based on the companies from the 1990s, where such companies were very aggressive, true. But right now, our industry is operating differently. And of course, the expectations concerning the working hours are different than when I began. Because actually in the 1990s, we had to work for like 100 hours a week. Right now, the younger generation wouldn't agree to something like that. So in the old times, actually it was a lot of it was about physical strength and condition. Right now, of course, the situation has changed. So 100, working hours a week requires a lot of strength. A lot of nights spending at work, etc. That, of course, did not promote women's participation. Now, of course, the situation is different. More technology is used. It's also possible to have remote work, continue working from home. This also is a big advantage. And that's why this thing can be seen differently. Thank you very much, President. We can come back to this topic, but you've mentioned the trends, the changing trends. But I think that we should come back to Paweł with the question regarding the international trends related to diversity. And are these translated into Polish situation? Yes, we've mentioned the most important trends in investing recently, that is SDG, and each investment company that has implemented the ESG has the scoring model that would exclude the companies who do not follow the criteria. So diversity and gender equality are taken into account, maybe indirectly, but they are. Recently, there are a lot of companies who've made this theme as their leading theme for investments, for the fund that has been established. And there may be different approaches and different criteria followed by investment funds. There may be funds that would not invest in entities where the pay gap between women and men is too big. But there may also be entities that would invest only in companies which offer equal career opportunities and professional development opportunities to men and women. Sometimes they set the criterion of a given percentage of women being present in the governing bodies of companies. Yes, now a question to President Małgorzata Barska. Is this already working, or are there also the diversity criteria? Is that translated into voting? Well, in our case, I've mentioned the 4 points before, and in 2 of them, this is very important, voting during general meetings of shareholders, because according to our strategy, we would vote against a man candidate if the participation of women in both the management board and supervisory board is less than 10%. And the second aspect, during ESG analysis, the share or participation of women in management boards is taken into account when we make the decision. Right now we're getting ready to analyzing the remuneration or pay gap between men and women. So step by step, we are implementing very specific activities. And we get a lot of support from the group, because the NN group assumed that by the end of 2023, there must be at least 40% of women in the governing bodies of the organization, and now we are at the level of 26. And Poland, actually, we've already reached 40%. So despite the difficulties and domination of men in our own business, we try to promote women and we try to encourage them to take higher and higher positions.
Thank you very much. And now to you, as a representative of a company with global presence. You work in a very diverse, multicultural environment. So this inclusion, engaging women in decision-making processes, is this just following the principles, or does it really translate into the functioning of the company and its success? Sumalingua is present on many different continents. We are present in India, Nordic countries, Poland, and the structure of our operations is that the project teams are always diverse. So we always have representatives of our Indian branches, Canadian branches, Polish branches. So for every client, we set up a diverse team representing various countries, sometimes from various continents. So this practice is aimed at promoting tolerance, and we already have a standard of anti-discriminatory procedures. There is zero tolerance policy for discrimination. This is already a norm, a standard. We also have a number of initiatives that actually promote inclusiveness. The greatest challenge probably is the fact that the scale of our operations of Sumalingua, who employs approximately over 100 people, makes it difficult to top up our business requirements with the diversity requirements. So when recruiting people, we try to consider the diversity criterion, but we have to make sure that the candidate has the right qualifications and experience. This is a great challenge for small companies such as ours. I'm not sure how other small companies deal with this, but for us it is a challenge. Well, thank you very much. And let me mention that money is usually quite successful in convincing people. So when diversity criteria are complied with or not complied with, does it actually translate into access to funding? Well, a number of such initiatives has already been initiated, not just by investment banks, but also by investment funds. They actually pay a lot of attention to the diversity of executive bodies in companies, and they actually take this into consideration when making decisions about allocating capital. So this is indeed something that is subject of in-depth analysis already and will probably become even more important in the near future. So for obvious reasons, as many of other panelists also said it, a diverse executive board, a diverse supervisory board translates into better business ideas, better business practices, better decisions. So if someone is to allocate the capital to a given company, if they invest in a diverse company, they can hope for better return on their investment. So this is the sound basis for such a criterion to be taken into account. Well, thank you very much. And referring to our discussion and objectives, years 2025 or 2030 respectively may be simply too late. Next year and the year after that, we will have the requirements for publication or for SFRD criteria, including diversity and equality. That requirement will be in force already in 2022. So, it will actually be possible to analyze these reports in an automated way very quickly, because they will be presented in a specific format. So this will translate into decisions by banks, investors, insurers, but also clients. your clients will also be aware of this data. It will be public. So as part of the B2B relations or chain of supplies, those companies that will not be able to offer such information will simply die out. They will have no access to funding in the future. Well, I would like to thank all our panelists. They've been so great and so diverse in their presentations. Mr. Misztal, Madam Kocemba-Muchowicz, Mr. Komiński, and Madam Małgorzata Barska. Thank you all very much.
Dziękujemy.
Dziękujemy.
Dziękujemy bardzo za wszystkie
Well, thank you very much. This has been such an important debate about diversity. Thank you for your inspiring presentations. And before we conclude, I would like to invite one of the founding members and volunteers of our 30% Club Poland, Iweta Opolska.
Szanowni Państwo, kończymy inaugurację,
ale rozpoczynamy this concludes our launching event, but we continue the activities of 30% Club in Poland. We are to change the face of Polish business. We want to make it more feminine, more diverse. You already know the starting point. That is 15.5% at the end of 2020. This has been measured for 140 companies listed on the Warsaw Stock Exchange. It is not enough. We are aware of that. This is why we are launching our campaign with specific, tangible targets. We want by 2030 to achieve the minimum participation of women in the executive bodies of Polish companies at the level of at least 30%. We do not want to wait until 2030. We have an interim target, which means that by 2025 we want to achieve a minimum of 20% of women in management boards and supervisory boards of Polish companies. So by 2025, we want male perspective to no longer dominate in any of these companies. We want women to be present in all the companies, and in particular those 140 that we used in order to calculate or to analyze the situation in 2020. You already met our founding members. I would like to thank them very much and congratulate them on their courage. So this is 13 brave founding members, but this is not an exhaustive list. We want to encourage and invite other CEOs, represent chairs of supervisory boards. You have heard about the Irish perspective. There are already 250 members there. We are starting with 13, but there is so much more we can do. You've heard about the companies that supported us in financial terms and in technical terms. This event would not have been possible without their support. Their support will also be needed for the future. So even if you're not able to be a member of 30% Club, you can still contribute. So if we have someone who identifies with our mission statement, please join us, support us. First of all, I would like to present persons who were in the background of the campaign, who helped to make it possible, to launch it. I will not mention everyone, but I hope that you can see the screen with their faces and their names. These are the persons who were working in the background in order to make this campaign possible, for it to be introduced in Poland. The very first ideas for the campaign to be introduced in Poland were already initiated 2 years ago, so we've worked for a long time. All of these people dedicated their free time in order to improve the world we live in, to make it more just, to make it more diverse. I would like to thank the way this is the agency which organized our launching event. The agency, and this is an interesting remark, wanted for the team responsible for today's team to be mainly composed of women. We have Madame Koller, we have the caller, we have our photographer, we have female interpreters. It is not all about women, it is about men. Anne Kearns was very right to say that we have to convince the men, we have to engage men because they dominate in the world of business today. So I would like to thank all the men who supported us, who helped us. You are paving the way in order to prove the statement that thanks to you, every successful woman will have a man behind her. And in the past, we used to say that every successful man has a woman behind him. So please follow the activities of 30% Club in Poland. We are already present on LinkedIn. We have our website. We will develop it. We will keep it up to date. We have already received emails. We will respond to them in the next few days. Do not hesitate. Write to us, support us. So I hope to see you in the near future. This is not a goodbye. Thank you.